What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Silver and Gray, and today we're going to be talking about the Dead Space remake. And I'm enjoying this a lot. You know, it definitely brings me back to the original Dead Space as well, because of the fact that this game is by far one of the best horror survival shooters known to man, especially when it comes to the gaming genre. Now, what I truly love about this remake so far, basically this is my impressions, this is not a review, is the fact that I love its volumetric lighting. I love the way how the USG Ishimura looks more organic and lifelike than from what the original did back in 2008. But however, what I love about this remake as well, it's not just about its volumetric lighting. It's the atmosphere, it's the sound quality, it's the structure of this whole entire ship, and how it just creates a vibrant, universal scare fest, as it were, because that's what the originals did, especially the first two. The Dead Space 3 wasn't really all that scary, but I did have some good jump scares on that one overall. It was still a good game, in my opinion, so I just thought I'd put that out there real quick. Now, what makes this remake a good rebound of a remake done proper is the fact that, you know, they finally were able to do something with a remake of a long, renowned game like Dead Space, to have that type of medium, and to understand that this is a game that is one of the best that's ever made. And not just that, it's the fact that how it really made an influence of today's gaming, or that of the gaming era that we've had back in 2008 when this game first came out. And I think that's another reason why the Dead Space is so popular, and that's why it's so well loved. And it's just the fact that what this game does, to a certain extent, of its gameplay, its overall structure of its story, the character progression, and vice versa. Now, there is one thing I would really like to add, is the fact that, you know, I'm kind of glad that they finally voiced Isaac in this remake, because honestly, I don't mind having mute protagonists, and I meant no disrespect for that. But I do like the fact that they implemented the voice acting for Isaac, especially in the Dead Space remake, because it gives a little bit more character. It gives a little bit of that better progression, in my personal opinion. And it really stands out, and it really just portrays Isaac Clarke, a better character to sympathize with. And, you know, I think Gunnar Wright did a really good or fantastic job of voicing Isaac Clarke once again in this remake. And I have to give him props. I have to really give him props, because he just does an awesome job. I love his vocalization. I love the tonality of it, and it's perfect. And I think and that's another thing I think what makes the Dead Space remake, or even the original series, mind you, is so well loved, because, you know, this story of these games are very unanimously unique from any other games of that type of nature. And I think that's the most important thing, in my personal opinion. So, I love the story. Obviously, I mentioned it before, I believe. I love the story in all three of them, really. I think it's very cool. And it just really harkens back to the nostalgia feel to it. And, you know, what the first one did back in the day, and how it not just how influential it was, but how it was just... It was not a mediocre game. It was critically acclaimed by reviewers, and a lot of fans love, you know, the Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, or maybe sometimes Resident Evil 6. Those games have like a third-person pan camera over the shoulder type of feel to it. And I think that's another reason why I think Dead Space was very well liked as well, because of the camera system. I think the camera system, when it comes to the Dead Space games, is a very interesting and robust way of knowing where what your surroundings are, and where the Necromorphs are coming from. Now, I do highly advise, if you want to play this game in 3D audio, by all means, play it in 3D audio, because I do have a 3D headset, and I will say it makes it more immersive, it makes it more interesting, and it makes it more mysterious in a certain way, to where you know where the necromorphs are coming from. Necromorphs, listen to me. Blah. Sorry about that. So that's where I want to leave that here. Now, fourth and foremost, what I really want to talk about this remake specifically is, in fact, that I love its lighting. I'm a huge sucker when it comes to audio and visual and basically overall everything, really, when it comes to video games in particular, because I think when it comes to remakes, especially like Resident Evil 2, I might add, it was a very well done remake from that of the original back on the PlayStation 1. Now, I actually ended up watching a video last night, and I watched a video on the comparison between 2008 Dead Space and 2023, or 2023, Dead Space Remake. And there were so many areas in the game of the original to where it was not really initially cut out. It was basically just gutted and made it more open in the remake. And I will say one thing about this. It's amazing. And another thing I will mention as well, what makes the remake of Dead Space so unique and so amazingly well done is, in fact, that it's more open now. It's more streamlined to where there is no loading in this game. And that's another thing I think a lot of people should know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do know, but some people should also know or be aware of that this game does not have any loading times. They completely gutted that out. They cut it out completely. And, going back to what I was mentioning, that this game is now streamlined. What I mean by streamlined, it's more open. They made it a little bit more open world-ish, should I say. It's a linear open world-ish type of feel to it. And I think that they did it really fantastically well. I was not... By all means, I was not... At first, I was like, do I really want to have that in this type of game? But overall, it felt, like I said, it felt more organic. It felt more real to a certain extent of the USG Ishimura, and that makes sense. Now, pardon me while I was sipping my tea there. And so another thing what I've noticed about when it comes to the Dead Space remake as well is the Necromorphs. The Necromorphs are basically have more of a little bit of RPG style to it, a little bit. Because apparently with the Necromorphs, they have the ability to cut off some of their skin first and then going down to the bone. It's kind of like what Horizon Zero Dawn did and Forbidden West did as well, because you're basically cutting off certain parts of the metal from those creatures in Horizon, right? Well, it kind of has a kind of feel in Dead Space Remake, and it's all the more reason why I think it's definitely a lot more challenging. I can tell you that right now, because I love that. I feel like that when it comes to games like this, or even remakes, I might add, they should do something like that more often, I think. And I think that's where the immersion gunplay and gameplay comes in, because you have that gameplay aesthetic to where it's like you're peeling off bits and pieces from the Necromorphs or from the dinosaur robots in Horizon Forbidden West or Zero Dawn. And I think it's really well done. It's very well implemented. I love the way how it works. It's fascinating. So like I said, I'm a huge audiophile and a videophile, and what I mean by this, I think I previously explained it, but I'm going to try to delve deep just a little bit more here, is the fact when it comes to video games in particular, I feel like that audio and video are always a good two things to look forward to in a video game. Obviously, when you're playing single-player games like Dead Space Remake or Horizon Forbidden West or Zero Dawn, it's story. But if the game's going to have a good story, it has to have good writing. And that's another thing I've also noticed with the remake as well. It stayed true to the original writing and script and story from what the original one did. They just branched it off just a little bit, but I'm not going to do any spoilers here because I feel like that there are other YouTubers out there that do explain the story a little bit, changing of the story element within Dead Space Remake, but overall, it's a good remake worth visiting. I can tell you that much right now. Now, what I will say about I want to talk a little bit about the weapons here, just a little bit, and I think what I really love about the weapons specific, especially when it comes to the plasma cutter, they did some unique things with it. I mean, they did some unique things within the weapons of Dead Space Remake. Going back to the plasma cutter, is you can now basically add, you can find schematics. I believe that they had that in the original. I'm not sure. I tried revisiting the original game back on my PlayStation 3, and it was tough. And it was rough as well. It's just like, oh my god. I couldn't believe how... I'm not ugly, that's the wrong word. It was dated. I can definitely tell it was dated. Veering off topic, so my apologies. With the plasma cutter, when you upgrade your weapons and when you upgrade your gear, specifically your weapons like the plasma cutter, you are able to have certain types of schematics that they will be added into the workbench. And I'll probably maybe dive into that a little bit more in a next video, because I'm just here talking about the overall gameplay structure of Dead Space Remake and its visual and its lighting, and why I believe that this remake is the best remake it's definitely one of the best remakes of 2023. We've had remakes in the previous years, and like I say, the Dead Space remake shows how amazing it looks in terms of the graphic fidelity department. I think it did a very good job, and fantastic job, I might add, is how they implemented better graphic detail. And it shows, and I automatically saw it right away once I got onto the USG Ishimura at the beginning of the game. I'm just like, oh my god, this is absolutely amazing. It's like, I literally can't wait to get into this game. So, now, what I want to also talk about the remake as well is, I think, what this game tells, or what it shows, when it comes to its volumetric lighting, when it comes to its lighting particle effects as well, and its graphic fidelity, it shows of how much passion EA Motive did a massive good job on this project. And I really love the fact that they're also passionate. I love it when there are developers that are so passionate of the games that they are providing for us consumers or gamers to play. And it's important to know that. And the reason why I'm talking about this right now is because of the fact that I feel like we're not going to get games like this very often. And it's not often enough that we do get remakes. I mean, we've had previous remakes before. We've had the Resident Evil 3 remake. We've had the Resident Evil 2 remake. We've had Resident Evil 0 remake, which was like that of the original Resident Evil back in the day, with updated graphics, quality of life improvements, and vice versa. So you have all these types of implementations of when it comes to the remake quality of video games like this. And it's astonishing. So, now, they did a really good job with the weapons. I'm loving the weapons. I'm loving the gear as well. The gear... Now, let's talk about the gear, actually, because I think what I've really noticed when it comes to the rig that Isaac Clarke uses, overall, for his overall armor, per se, should I say, is I love the fact that you can upgrade it, and it's so expensive to upgrade. But it's worth it, because what's nice is that each gear rig, or each rig that you have to upgrade to, your inventory slots increase. And that's a good thing, because usually I love it when games have that type of implementation to where it's like if you're going to upgrade like a certain type of armor that you have already on your character, like Dead Space, it's always a good idea to have your inventory slots increase. I think that's the more important way of doing it. it's just my personal and or opinion on that. Now, what I will say as well is the zero gravity. I love the zero gravity in this game. I think they did a really good job or amazingly good job of how they implemented that into in one whole entire world of the USG Ishimura. And it shows that they really tweaked it. They really tweaked it. I love it. Because I remember back in the day when you played the original Dead Space on PS3 or PC or 360, you were able to only like go to certain areas in Zero G, and you're only able to point down to where you wanted to go and land there in the original. They didn't do that in this remake, and I love that. I love the fact that you were able to circumvent and maneuver a lot better within the Zero G environment, especially in the Dead Space remake, and I think they did such a good job. I love the tweaks that they did, and like I said previously, it shows. And it's amazing that when it comes to a remake like this, like I said before, it's done proper. They did a lot of good work, reworking of the gameplay aesthetic and implementations of what they wanted to do with the Zero G, with the weapons, with the gear. They wanted to make it a little bit more realistic, and I think they did I think they did an awesome job. Now, there is one thing I do want to add here as well. They actually end up going with the Frostbite engine. The Frostbite engine is, I believe, in my opinion, it's a good engine to work with. I mean, me personally, I'm not a professional game reviewer or game director or whatever, but I think it's a really good engine that they use for the Dead Space remake. And it shows, like I said before, because of what the lighting looks like. It's more eerie. It's a little robust, and I just love the way how they did certain things with the Frostbite engine. Now, there is one thing I will mention as well when it comes to the Frostbite engine in Dead Space 2023 remake. What they did. Now, what they were able to do with the new engine is, in fact, like I said, since the USG Ishimura is one sprawling interconnected space, as it is, but it wasn't like that previously in the original, is, in fact, that they were able to streamline a lot more attention to detail. And not only that, they were able to make it more open, and hence why I'm going back to the linear open world-ish to it, is the fact that you don't have to go to the tram all the time. You don't have to go to the tram and complete the level. They don't do that anymore. In this one, when you complete a level, it completes. But then it's more streamlined. You're able to go out and do more and start that next chapter with no loading screens. That's what I'm talking about when it comes where it's streamlined and where it's more open world-ish. And it was because of the fact that they wanted to have the USG Ishimura, to be a more sprawling interconnected space. They wanted to basically just make it more open, like I said, part of the repetition. And they wanted it all to be one massive loop. They didn't want to have the constant small loops like they did in the original Dead Space. That's pretty much where I'm trying to go with this. So my bad that I was being somewhat a little cryptic there. I didn't mean to. Oh boy. Now, what I will say about the remake as well, all I can say, dude, I'm just really glad that they did this. But the only thing I do kind of complain, I have one small complaint actually, is the fact that I don't know why they needed to make this game only for the next generation of hardware, but I get it. And the reason why they did that is because what they're doing now when it comes to these game developers, they are now going to be making games more for the newer generation of hardware than the old generation that we've previously had with the PS4 and Xbox One and vice versa. So, I mean, I guess I understand that, but it's just me. That's the way how I feel about it. But, you gotta understand, it's like when we have these new generational of hardware, whether if it's a PC, obviously, because you can constantly upgrade it, or if you have like the newer consoles like PS5, Xbox One Series X and S, you know, like I said, I get it. I understand, dude, because they want to be able to be able to make games look a lot better and feel great and vice versa on the new generational hardware. So I just thought I'd put a little bit of that tidbit in here because I feel like that maybe, I know it was not necessary, but I just felt like I need to get my point across, you know, basically tell you how I feel, even though I didn't really need to, but it's whatever. So, here are my last impressions on this game. Buy it. Go ahead and just get the standard edition if you want to. What I will say is that you will not be disappointed with this remake. I think, like I previously mentioned, this is a remake done proper, done right. You know, basically, you know, keeping the original style to a certain degree, but upping the graphics on it, you know, upping everything basically. And I think that's the most, I think, like I said, you know, that's the most important thing. If it's like, if you're going to do a remake done proper, do it right. You know, don't like just do copy and paste and just, you know, update the visuals and that's it. That's not a good way of doing it. I found out when it comes to making remakes, make it from the ground up, like they did with Dead Space Remake. You know, upgrade the visuals, upgrade the rig that Isaac Clarke wears, make it more realistic, make it more lifelike to a certain degree, and like I said, it shows. It greatly shows, and I love the way how they just did everything so right and so perfect in a game. Now, there is one thing I will end here, is in fact that, you know, no remake or any other video game out there is gonna be perfect. It's never gonna be perfect. Don't expect a game, whether if it's a remake or not, don't expect for it to be perfect. I'm finding it hard to believe, or I'm also finding out that when gamers in particular, like me or anybody, is in fact that, you know, we're all hyped up for video games, right? We're all hyped up for newer generational of hardware or newer games and vice versa, but what I'm trying, point being, and what I'm trying to say is in fact that, you know, don't hype yourself up too much. So what I'm saying is that, you know, when you talk about a game specific and you're really excited for it, and then when it finally comes out, you're like, my expectations are very, very low now. This game sucks, right? But that's not where I'm getting with Dead Space Remake. And I think that's where it's not just because of this nostalgia feel to it. It's in fact that they just did an awesome job what they did. And I love the exploration. I think the exploration is done perfectly as well. And so, yeah, man, it's awesome. But anyways, I want to add one more last thing here real quick, because we are getting close to the end of this video. There is a little bit of a progression lock, just a little bit in terms of, you know, opening up certain things, like containers and vice versa, or lockers. So bear in mind, it's like, if you want to know how to open those up, you have to get, you know, rank 2 level, or not rank 2 level, you have to get to rank 2 authorization in order to open those up, and the same thing as rank 3. So I thought I'd put that out there as well. But anyways, this is Silver and Gray here. Thank you for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. But if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comment section below. But more than happy to reply back. And you guys have a good rest of your day. And have a great Sunday. Peace.